On the edge of the quiet old forest, where the Withywindle slid slowly out of the Barrow Downs ravine, stood a cottage roofed in flowers. Broad, well-kept lawns and gardens surrounded it, and the trees at the far edge had been pruned into a tidy green wall. This was the home of the ever-joyful Tom Bombadil and his wife, the gentle Goldberry. With Huorns blocking the old forest's paths, few ever disturbed Tom's little house. Yet today the cottage was unusually lively. When the green flame in the hearth flared, 3 figures stepped out of it in turn: Dewey, Gandalf, and Frodo. Sam, Merry, and Pippin, who had meant to follow, had been left behind at Hogwarts Castle. Tom greeted his visitors with boisterous delight and big, warm embraces. Lady Goldberry, graceful and serene, brought out fruits and nut cakes grown on the Huorn themselves. They were sweeter and more invigorating than any ordinary orchard produce. The 3 ate and talked together, trading stories of the lands they had seen, customs, climates, mountains, rivers, and the plants and beasts that lived there. Tom had no taste for politics or war. He wanted only to hear about living things. Frodo, unfamiliar with many of the topics, listened quietly while nibbling Goldberry's cakes. When their talk turned to the purpose of the visit, Tom's face lit up as if a great weight had been lifted. He leaped to his feet, waving his arms and legs in delight. "Wonderful, you're finally going to take that troublesome thing away." He ran into a cluttered back room, and after rummaging under a pile of oddments, dragged out a large, dust-covered wooden chest. Dewey and the others followed to see what he would do. Inside the large chest nested a smaller wooden box. Inside that was an even smaller silver box. Tom set the silver box on the table with a disgusted shake of his head. "That ring keeps whispering nonsense and giving me a headache. Lately it's been louder. It's made my cattle and horses restless. It's always trying to slip away. Once it even tempted a mouse to try and steal it, so I locked it up here. Only then did it quiet down a little." Tom tapped the silver box with one finger, and it sprang open on its own. The one ring lay inside, plain and terrible. The moment it was revealed, a seductive power poured out of it. Dewey felt it like a tug at his very heart, a voice promising strength like Sauron's, promising that with the ring he might shatter the shackles of the soul, ascend to a Maya-level being, and win true immortality. Reason and craving wrestled within him, urging him to stretch out a hand, to seize the ring and keep it. Just as his fingers twitched, a sharp pain shot through his mind, and a clear thought pierced the fog. Instinctively, Dewey stepped back and invoked occlumency. In his head, a mental fortress rose, solid and sealed, a citadel that shut out the ring's assault and snapped his grip on temptation. Years, decades of discipline had honed his occlumency. He had built in his mind an elaborate stronghold, a labyrinthine place of false memories, psychological traps, and memory black holes, a place designed so no one could reach the true core of his memory and soul and turn him into a puppet. The mental castle hardened at once into an unyielding defense, and the ring's pull could not take hold. Gandalf, too, strained against the ring's lure with all the force of his will. He stood tense, every muscle set, gazing at the ring as if facing a dangerous foe. Its power was greater than it had been known to be. Even unhanded, its influence was felt. Gandalf had braced himself, but seeing it in the flesh made him solemn. He glanced quickly at Frodo and at Dewey, worried they might have succumbed. He found Dewey's eyes clear and frowning. Dewey looked back unmoved. "Dewey, are you all right?" Gandalf asked. Dewey shook his head once. "Don't worry, Gandalf. My occlumency holds. If I don't touch it, it cannot take me." Gandalf breathed easier. He trusted Dewey, had watched him grow in power over the decades. Dewey had reached a rare prowess, his strength not far below that of the great and ancient among them. Years of meditation had tempered his spirit and soul. If his mind remained harmonious and his soul whole, maybe, though it was almost impossibly difficult, he could break the shackles and rise to a Maya-like existence. Only a handful of names, Arendil, Glorfindel, stood as proof of that change, and even those had endured awful trials and unlikely graces. Not even Galadriel, with Nenya in her keeping, had crossed that threshold. To rise to godlike being was an ascent few could claim. Gandalf turned his concern to Frodo. The hobbit had felt the ring's pull too, but hobbits proved strange and stubbornly resistant. After a short, dangerous distraction, Frodo had recovered himself. He had stepped back carefully, wishing to put distance between himself and the ring. Gandalf allowed himself a small, relieved smile. The hobbits were a peculiar people, small, plain, and easily overlooked, yet capable of resisting a power that could beguile beings far greater. "Frodo, try to pick up the ring, but be careful not to be swayed by it," Gandalf warned. In that room, only Tom and Bilbo could touch the ring without being tempted by it. Tom, however, could not leave the old forest, and Bilbo's place in the world made him unsuitable to carry it. That left Frodo as the only practicable choice. Frodo hesitated, wary of the pale thing in its box, but reached in and lifted the ring into his palm. Gandalf watched the young hobbit's face as it changed and asked softly, "How do you feel?" Frodo stared at the gold band, his gaze fixed. "I don't quite know. There's a voice in my heart telling me to hide it and keep it for myself. But I can bear it. If I ignore that voice, it doesn't get much hold." Gandalf exhaled with relief, but his voice turned grave. "You must be on your guard, Frodo. The ring corrupts. If you let it, it will twist you until you are its puppet." Frodo straightened. "I'll be very careful," he promised. Dewey, standing close by, added, "Its corrupting power is strong. Even if you're not tempted right away, prolonged contact will wear you down. Tom's box weakens its influence. Let's get it safely contained." He produced a palm-sized leather pouch and handed it to Frodo. "This is dragonhide. It blocks magic and contains a pocket space inside. Put the ring in the box, then the box in this pouch." Frodo forced back his reluctance and obeyed. He slipped the ring into the little box, then placed the box inside the dragonhide pouch. Even then, he could faintly feel a tug from within the pouch, but it was far weaker. All three, Dewey, Gandalf, and Frodo, relaxed. For Frodo, the inner voice that had tugged at him vanished. The pull and the longing ebbed away. With the ring secured, there was no reason to linger. After farewells to Tom and Goldberry, the trio prepared to return to Hogwarts by way of the Flow. Frodo stepped first into the hearth. "Hogwarts," he cried, scattering a pinch of Floo powder into the green flames. The fireplace flared, and the green fire shivered, opening the channel for travel. Then, without warning, an invisible shadow reached out from the dragonhide pouch. The ring's dark force pierced both the box and the pouch and struck at the stability of the space surrounding them. The Floo network hitched and juddered. What had been a steady path suddenly bucked and eddied. "Oh no!" Dewey's face went white as he realized something was wrong. He lunged to stop Frodo, but the green flames had already swallowed him. Before Dewey could touch him, Frodo vanished up the chimney. Gandalf saw the look on Dewey's face and asked in alarm, "What happened, Dewey?" Dewey's jaw tightened. Something erupted from Frodo the instant he was traveling. It disrupted the Floo network's spatial stability. He could have been sent anywhere. At that, Gandalf guessed the truth. "The ring," he said quietly. "It contains a fragment of Sauron's power and will, always straining to return to him. It slipped from Isildur, causing his doom. It abandoned Gollum and chose Bilbo. Now, sensing danger, it has tried to break free from us by seizing Frodo and carrying him back toward its master. We must find him, if he's been cast someplace dangerous." Dewey could not finish the thought. The possibility of Frodo stranded in some remote or hostile place was unbearable. "I'll check the Marauder's map in case he's within our territory," Dewey said, pulling the parchment from his pocket and fanning it open. The map tracked every presence across Dewey's lands. If Frodo had landed within its bounds, his location could be revealed at once. Before Dewey could search, Tom Bombadil's voice drifted in from the doorway. "No need for the map, Duir," he said. "The west wind tells me the hobbit you seek is in the Old Forest." "In the Old Forest?" Dewey and Gandalf both stared. Tom nodded, but his face clouded. "You must hurry. He has the ring, and the trees are angry with it. They're already upon him." Dewey's fear mounted. If Frodo had materialized in the Old Forest, he might already be in grave peril. "Where?" Dewey demanded. "Downstream along the Withywindle," Tom said. "At Old Man Willow himself. Remember that place." Dewey scarcely wasted a second. He apparated, taking Gandalf with him. They came down by the river to the clearing where Old Man Willow loomed, an immense half-rotted tree with a trunk split like a yawning mouth. Its thick branches twisted and sighed with a low, hypnotic hum that set the teeth on edge. Frodo stumbled through the undergrowth, bewildered and disheveled. He had no idea how he had come to be here. At first, he didn't recognize the Old Forest. but the hostile presence around him was unmistakable. 1,000 unseen eyes pressing from the trunks, a malice in the leaves. The hairs along Frodo's spine rose. He drew the little dagger Dewey had given him and crept forward, searching the shadowy trunks for any shape that might strike. There were no birds singing, only the rustle of leaves. The gazes were the tree's own. The stories he had heard in Buckland returned to him. The old forest was living and resentful, jealous of intruders. Frodo realized with a jolt that he must be inside it. He tightened his grip on the dagger and moved as quietly as he could, praying in his mind that Dewey and the others would arrive before the trees could do him harm. The forest's malice did not wait. Branches trembled, leaves whispered like a chorus of voices. Huge limbs swung down to crush him, where roots heaved out of the earth to snare his feet. Frodo darted and weaved, small and quick, and the protective brooch Dewey had given him flared with magic whenever a limb struck, holding the blow at bay. He ran for the clearing where Old Man Willow stood, hoping to find a way out. Luck, if it could be called that, led him straight into the old willow's embrace. The tree's hypnotic song washed over him. The brooch's protection could not block that low, ancient call. Frodo felt his limbs go heavy as sleep, and he stumbled toward the dark opening in the tree's trunk, as if pulled by the very voice of the wood. "Petrificus totalis!" Dewey cried. He had reached the clearing in time and hit Old Man Willow with a powerful binding spell. The willow froze mid-sway. The hypnotic hum died away as if cut off. Frodo slumped against the root, dazed but not wholly entranced, and the immediate danger eased, at least for the moment. Dewey's strength was far beyond what it had been before. With a single motion, he froze Old Man Willow in place. The tree's flailing branches stopped midair, as if time itself had paused. Without Old Man Willow's hypnotic hold, Frodo blinked and slipped back into consciousness. He stared at the towering, malevolent tree and the hollow large enough to swallow him whole. A chill ran down his spine, and he scrambled away as fast as he could. When he saw Dewey and Gandalf, relief flooded his face, and he ran to them, breathless. "Dewey! Gandalf! Thank goodness you're here! I don't know what happened. I just appeared in the woods, and the trees started attacking me. If it weren't for the brooch you gave me, Dewey, I might be dead." "Sorry, we didn't expect this either." Dewey patted Frodo's shoulder. "That incident was caused by the ring. It tried to separate you from us so it could control you." Gandalf added, "The trees attacking you were because of the One Ring as well. Frodo, you must be prepared. The ring not only tempts you, it draws the attention of dark things. You will probably meet dangers like this again, and worse." Hearing them, Frodo felt the object in his pocket grow immeasurably heavy. He understood now, more clearly than ever, how dangerous the One Ring was. Gandalf stayed close to calm him, while Dewey turned his attention toward the half of Old Man Willow, crouched by the creek. A playful light crossed Dewey's face as he approached the immobilized tree, patted its trunk, and greeted it like an old acquaintance. "Well, well, long time no see, Old Man Willow. I didn't expect you'd recover so well after all those years." Old Man Willow could not move, but the sight of its old enemy stirred vivid memories, and waves of resentment and fear radiated from it. It blamed Dewey, this powerful wizard, for nearly killing it back then, for reducing it to half a body and forcing it into a long sleep before it slowly healed. It feared Dewey's strength. If Dewey chose to finish it, it would die without a second's warning. Dewey could sense all this without any magical probing, but he had no intention of harming the tree. In consideration of Tom Bombadil and the Ents of Fangorn, he would not strike the willow down. Instead, he broke off a few willow branches with a precise flick of his hand, intending them for Ollivander to make into wands. After removing the branches, Dewey waved his wand and released Old Man Willow from his bindings. Then he turned and walked back toward Gandalf and Frodo. Though the tree could move again, it dared not attack. The human's aura was too strong. Any ambush now would be suicide. The willow quivered with fear and hesitation as Dewey left, its courage greatly diminished after such a grievous loss. Dewey smiled slightly and moved on, dismissing it from his mind. "How do you plan to get back? Apparition?" Gandalf asked. Frodo watched Dewey curiously. Dewey frowned. "Apparition with Frodo isn't safe. The One Ring can interfere with networks of magic. If it can cause trouble with the Flu network, it might do the same during apparition. Apparition requires absolute concentration. If the ring distracts me even for a moment, we could end up splinched. Gandalf's face grew grave. Splinching is not a risk to take. So no apparition, and I won't use a portkey either, Dewey said. But I have other options. Broomsticks in my bag, and with that, and to Frodo's astonishment, Dewey transformed. He became a magnificent phoenix of gold and flame, radiating a warm, almost sacred light as he circled overhead. With a swift dive, he extended his talons, scooped up Frodo and Gandalf, and in a blazing flash, the three of them vanished. A heartbeat later, fire blossomed in the headmaster's office at Hogwarts. The phoenix stepped from the flames, set Frodo and Gandalf down, circled once, and folded back into Dewey. Gandalf looked around in surprise. We're back at Hogwarts already? That method of travel, better than the Flu Network, apparition, or portkeys, only a vanishing cabinet compares. Frodo nodded. He had known the dizzying, nauseating sensation of the Flu Network and shuddered to think of it. The Phoenix's transit had been intense. Being wrapped in fire was unnerving, but it had been instantaneous and left no lingering disorientation. It was far superior. Dewey peered out the office window at the students laughing and playing on the grounds, then turned to them with a serious expression. Before we go to Rivendell, we have to deal with the ring. He looked tired but resolute. The ring was a massive danger while in the castle. Over 700 students and teachers lived there, none with Frodo's unusual resistance or with Dewey and Gandalf's strength of will. If the ring stayed, or if anyone came too close to it, even if it were sealed in a box or a dragonhide pouch, it could corrupt them. The One Ring was different from other rings of power. Sauron had poured much of himself into it. Even the Maya would not touch it. Prolonged proximity, even without direct contact, could be enough to twist someone's heart. Dewey would not risk that. They needed to move the ring away and to isolate its influence as much as possible. How do you plan to do it? Gandalf asked. He trusted Dewey would have a plan. Follow me, Dewey said, and led them out of the office. They followed him down a corridor and stopped before a smooth, blank wall. Dewey faced it and tapped it gently with his wand. To Frodo's amazement and Gandalf's quiet approval, a door traced in mithril shimmered into being on the wall. Dewey pushed it open and beckoned them inside. The room beyond was luminous and strangely boundless. Walls, ceiling, and floor were an unbroken expanse of white, as if the room extended beyond sight. It was utterly silent and immaculate, not even a mote of dust to disturb it. Time itself felt paused in that space. When Gandalf saw the place, his eyes clouded as if he had caught a glimpse of Valinor. Frodo, meanwhile, stared around in astonishment. There was no visible light source, yet the whole chamber glowed, bright but not blinding. Time seemed to lose meaning here. Where are we? Frodo asked before he could stop himself, eyes wide. This is my secret room, Duir said with a smile. The Room of Requirement. Room of Requirement, Frodo echoed, turning the name over in his mind. Exactly as it sounds, Duir replied, leading them deeper into the space. The room will become whatever you most need. A recreation of Bag End, a secret garden full of flowers and trees, a vault piled with gold, whatever you can imagine it can make. But nothing created here can leave the room. Step beyond its bounds, and it will vanish. Frodo's astonishment only deepened. A room that could contrive any need, an all-purpose wish house, sounded impossibly magical. Even Gandalf, who already knew of the room, listened with new admiration. Compared to Duir, the wizard's mastery of magical lore seemed different in scale and direction. Duir had not brought them only to admire the chamber. He led them further in. After a few minutes of walking, Frodo saw objects arranged with care. Crystal platforms suspended in the air held a golden cup, a crown, a sword, a hat, a cloak, and a ruby. Nearby, cabinets, mirrors, and shallow pools dotted the floor. A magnificent golden mirror drew Frodo's attention. It seemed to hum with its own power and pulled at him. He drew close and looked in. At first, the glass showed only his reflection, then the image shifted. The figure in the mirror stood atop a vast volcano, rivers of lava all around. He looked haggard and pallid, yet he smiled, and then he took a ring from his finger. Frodo caught his breath. The reflection winked and flung the ring into the burning maw. Scorching magma swallowed it. The ring was consumed and utterly destroyed. What did you see? Duir's voice came from behind him. Startled, Frodo turned to find Duir and Gandalf standing there. Gandalf studied the mirror intently, thoughtful. Duir watched Frodo with curiosity. "I saw myself," Frodo said, still dazed. "But I was different, standing on a huge volcano surrounded by lava. The air was heavy and hot, and then I threw the ring into the lava, and it was destroyed." "Is it a mirror of prophecy?" Frodo asked, hope bright in his eyes. "Does this mean I will destroy the ring?" Gandalf shook his head. "I'm afraid not, Frodo. This is not a mirror of prophecy, but a mirror of desire." Duir nodded. "Gandalf is right. This is the mirror of Erised. It shows the deepest longing of the heart. The stronger the desire, the stronger the mirror's pull. You can become lost in it, trapped by illusion. Because your whole purpose is to see the ring destroyed, you saw the vision you most wish for. That does not make it meaningless, however. If your will holds and you are not overcome by the ring, what you saw might yet come to pass." Frodo held the image in his mind as if memorizing it, and said with renewed resolve, "I will make it happen." Both Duir and Gandalf smiled, relieved. Frodo turned from the mirror to examine a nearby pool, a heptagonal basin filled with a liquid that shimmered with faint electric light. He leaned closer. "Lord Duir, what is this?" he asked. "This is the wizard transformation pool," Duir said. "It contains the blood of a thunderbird I collected. A person may bathe in it and be remade as a wizard. If you wish to learn magic as the students in the castle do, you could jump in now and become a magic-wielding hobbit," Duir said, his tone tempting. "You would endure severe pain, tendons pulled, bones reshaped, but you would gain power. Are you willing?" Frodo felt the pull. He had seen much strange power at the castle and envied the students' command of magic. The offer was tempting. Yet, to Duir's surprise, Frodo shook his head. "No," he said. "Thank you, Duir, but I would rather remain an ordinary hobbit. After the ring-bearer task is done, I want to return to the Shire and live quietly. Besides," he added, "if I cannot resist the temptation right in front of me, I would never withstand the ring itself." Duir's surprise softened into admiration. Gandalf's face glowed with pride. That Frodo could refuse such power marked him as the right ring-bearer. Duir admitted privately that, had the ring not been involved, the image in the mirror of Erised might well have shown him differently. The bloodline fusion potion in the pool had originally been prepared for Bilbo, who had refused it. Duir had considered offering it to Frodo so that magical strength might make the quest easier. Now, he left the potion where it was and would seek other candidates. Magical concoctions do not spoil. Duir then led them to another display, a black palantir set upon a crystal plinth, and beside it, a small crystal phial that gleamed with starlight. Duir lifted the phial and handed it to Frodo, then covered the palantir with a black cloth. "This is the light of Arundel," he said softly, "a gift from Lady Galadriel of Lothlorien. It can hold back dark power. If you keep it with the ring, it will lessen the ring's influence over you." Frodo took the crystal bottle and watched the holy light inside glow softly. A warmth spread through him. The faint mental pressure the One Ring had been exerting slackened noticeably, and he felt much lighter. He smiled with relief. Arendel's light was a marvel. "Thank you, Dewey," he said without ceremony. Carefully, he placed the light into his spatial pouch, tucking it beside the small box that contained the One Ring. That alone would help blunt the ring's pull for a while, and so long as no one put their hand too close. Duai had prepared further measures. He produced a second bottle, this one filled with a dark green liquid, and instructed, "Take out the box with the ring. Pour this in so the ring can soak. Be careful not to touch the liquid." Frodo hesitated a moment, then obediently opened the box. The instant the ring was exposed, a fierce temptation flared from it, trying to tug at their minds. But Dewey and Gandalf were ready. Dewey's occlumency closed down like a wall. For a while the ring could not touch him. Gandalf, with the strength of his spirit, resisted as well. Frodo's hobbit nature made him less susceptible than most. So though the ring reached for them, none of the three yielded. Dewey handed the green bottle to Frodo. He poured the viscous liquid into the box. It smelled faintly fishy and made Frodo wrinkle his nose. Almost immediately, the ring's seductive radiance snapped away, and the liquid began to roar and boil, as if a piece of red-hot iron had been plunged into cold water. "All right, close it," Dewey urged. Frodo snapped the lid shut and latched it. the box sealed perfectly. None of the steaming liquid leaked. "What was that?" Frodo asked, astonished. It actually made the ring stop. "That," Dewey said, "is basilisk venom. It is among the deadliest and most corrosive substances there is. It cannot destroy the ring, but soaking the ring in it will blunt its dark power so it cannot reach into and inflame the hearts of those nearby. It is, in a way, fighting poison with poison." Frodo brightened. "So if the ring stays in the venom, I won't have to worry about being corrupted?" Dewey shook his head. "Not forever. Think of it like dropping a red-hot iron into water. A common iron block would cool quickly, but the ring is not common metal. It contains an almost inexhaustible power. It emits heat continually. It will boil the venom away, and in time the venom will lose its poison and no longer restrain the ring. I will prepare more basilisk venom for you before you go to Mordor. You must change the venom in the box regularly. Keep it topped up, and the ring's influence will be minimized." Frodo accepted the help gratefully. Carrying the ring was wearing on him despite his resistance. Any easing of that burden was a blessing. Dewey seemed to remember something else and produced a small crystal vial. "Take this too." The liquid inside was perfectly clear. Frodo peered in, curious. "What is it?" "Phoenix tears," Dewey said. "They heal many wounds and poisons. Only phoenix tears can completely neutralize basilisk venom, for example, and they can mend much that the dark arts do. If a ringwraith's Morgul blade left a shard in you and you still had breath, one drop could save you." Dewey's voice softened. "I give them to you as a precaution, though I hope you never have need of them." A sudden realization struck Frodo. These were Dewey's own tears. He stared at the crystal-clear liquid, amazed that such a simple thing could be so potent. Gandalf smiled at him. "You are fortunate. Phoenix tears are a true life-saving remedy. One drop can draw someone back even from the threshold of Mando's halls. They surpass any other healing in the world." With the items secured, the three left the room of requirement. Frodo watched the door close behind them and the niche in the wall vanish. He let out a small breath at the cleverness of it, but a question nagged at him. So many people passed through the castle every day. Did Dewey not worry someone might stumble into that hidden chamber? He had seen the room's contents, treasures and artifacts, each priceless. Gandalf had teased that each item was worth more than the hoard of a dragon. Frodo thought of Uncle Bilbo's stories. Bilbo had once told him his own hoard was little compared to Dewey's, that the difference was like clouds to mud. Frodo wore a mithril shirt that could have bought the entire Shire. Bilbo's wealth had been immense. Frodo could only imagine how much more Dewey might hold, especially with the tales Hogwarts students told of Smaug and the mountain of gold he once guarded. If so much lay in that hidden room, wasn't it a tempting target? He never voiced the question. Dewey would only have smiled and said there was no cause for alarm. The room of requirement he kept was not an ordinary hiding place. It was a refuge he had spent more than a decade forging. Passing students or professors might find some versions of the room by chance, but the particular chamber that housed Dewey's treasures was bound to him. Apart from Dewey himself and those he permitted, no one could enter it, not even with the right words or the correct method. It was, in effect, Dewey's private chamber of secrets, linked to his soul. With the ring temporarily secured and their provisions given, Frodo went to rejoin his fellow hobbits. Dewey and Gandalf began preparing to travel to Rivendell for the council. After seeing to matters at the castle and the school, Dewey gathered with Gandalf, Frodo, and his three companions, Bilbo, Legolas, and a few others in his private tower. Bilbo, as the ring's former bearer, had to be present. Legolas came as the Woodland Realm's representative for the meeting Lord Elrond would hold in Rivendell. Because the One Ring might still cause accidents during magical travel, Floo network, apparition, or portkey, Dewey did not take chances. Though the ring's influence had been greatly reduced by the light of Arendelle and by basilisk venom, Dewey chose to eliminate even that 1 in 10,000 risk. He transformed into a great phoenix and carried Frodo himself to Rivendell. The others went the ordinary way, stepping through fireplaces. Rivendell was unchanged, as if the years had never touched it. Mountain flowers still bloomed, and the place kept its timeless beauty for the long-lived elves who felt decades as nothing. On the white square before the last homely house, a ball of flame appeared without warning. The elven sentries tensed, but when a magnificent phoenix rose out of the fire, they relaxed at once. Their wary sharpness softened into wonder. The phoenix hovered above the stones, holding Frodo gently by the shoulders, and gave a clear, melodious cry that seemed to weave courage and hope into the air. Elves who heard it could not help but look up at that sacred, glorious figure. Inside the last homely house, Elrond looked up from his writing and smiled. A refined male elf, drawn by the phoenix's song, had come down to the square. He clapped his hands and greeted Duir warmly. "Duir, my friend, you bring a surprise." The phoenix settled, shifted into human form, and embraced the elf with a bright, familiar smile. "Lindir, long time no see." Duir and Lindir had long been on good terms. Lindir served as Elrond's trusted secretary. As they broke the embrace, Lindir's attention fell to the hobbit at Duir's side. "Who is this guest, Duir?" "This is Bilbo's nephew, Frodo Baggins. He bears a great burden this time," Duir said, lowering his voice on the last words as if to hint at something fraught. Lindir, who knew many of Elrond's secrets, understood at once what Duir meant. His pupils narrowed, and he took an instinctive step back. The tales of the One Ring and its danger were not unknown to him. He felt the urge to distance himself. Still, he forced a warm smile and bowed formally. "Welcome, Mr. Frodo Baggins." He kept his distance nonetheless, subtle but deliberate. Duir introduced him. "Frodo, this is Lindir, Lord Elrond's secretary, and my father-in-law. He is much trusted by Elrond." "Hello, Secretary Lindir," Frodo replied, measured and slightly wary. At that moment, green flames flared up in the public fireplace by the square, and one by one the rest of the company stepped out. Gandalf, Bilbo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, Legolas, and the two lively children who always seemed to bring sunlight with them, Elses and Elros. "Uncle Lindir," the two cried, and ran straight to him. Tenderness softened Lindir's face. When he saw them, he crouched, arms open. "Elses, Elros, what are you doing here?" "They heard I was coming to Rivendell, and insisted on coming too," Duir said with a smile. Elses and Elros were a favorite story wherever they went. Popular at Hogwarts, adored by students and professors alike, and cherished in Rivendell by their maternal grandfather Elrond and by a circle of fond elves, including Lindir. Half-elves by blood, they bore neither the aloofness of some elves nor any lack of warmth. They were vibrant and emotional, two little suns who brightened a room and made people smile. Elros, livelier of the two, clung to Lindir and pouted playfully. "Uncle Lindir, Elros missed you. Did you miss Elros?" Lindir's smile went utterly gentle. He stooped to their level. "Who could not miss our little princess? I have some Miravor brewed with the first honey of the spring blossoms. How would you like to taste it later?" Elros's eyes sparkled, and she nodded so eagerly she nearly bobbed. "Yes, thank you, Uncle Lindir." Even Elses, steadier than his sister, could not hide his pleasure. Miravor was a treasured cordial of Rivendell, made from the garden's nectar and brewed in a way that warmed the heart, banished fatigue, and restored vigor. Elses and Elros loved it. As darlings of the house, they were never denied the sweet draught, and on occasion drank enough to seem themselves perfumed with 100 flowers, the very butterflies following in their wake. Lindir greeted Gandalf, Legolas, and the others in turn, taking one child by each hand. Together, they went up the path toward the last homely house, where Elrond was already waiting in the hall. As they entered, Elses and Elros sprang free of Lindir's hands and ran to their grandfather. "Grandfather," they cried, and Elrond's stern, noble features softened into a warm, loving smile as he gathered them close. He asked about their recent adventures, listened, and then looked up to regard the guests who had just arrived. The council hall of Rivendell was filled. Representatives of the free peoples from all over Middle-earth had gathered. Elrond, Lord of Rivendell, Glorfindel, Galadriel, Lady of Lothlorien, Galdor of the Grey Havens, and Legolas of Mirkwood. Men were present as well. Boromir, son of the Regent of Gondor, Theodred, son of Theoden of Rohan, Bane, Lord of Dale, son of Bard, Grimbeorn of the Anduin Valley, a descendant of Beorn, and Aragorn, chieftain of the northern Dúnedain. The dwarves were represented by Gloin and his son Gimli for the kingdom under the mountain, Blin, son of Balin, speaking for Moria, and Thorin III Stonehelm of the Iron Hills. The hobbits, Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, had come. Among the wizards were Gandalf the Grey, Radagast the Brown, Morleda the Blue, and Duir. That so many could assemble quickly was thanks to the Department of Magical Transportation under Dewey's Ministry of Magic, which had established a flu network linking all factions and allowing delegates to arrive through fireplaces. Before the council began, people exchanged greetings and reacquainted themselves. When Gloin spotted Dewey and Bilbo, he raised his voice and embraced them both. "Long time no see. Bilbo, Dewey, never expected to see you here." Gloin had been one of the 13 dwarves on the quest of Erebor, and Bilbo was genuinely glad to see an old companion. Though Dewey and Thorin Oakenshield had once had their disagreements, time had smoothed old grievances, and the reunion was warm. "It's good to see you again, Gloin," Dewey said, smiling and taking him in. "You've been well. You look plumper than before." Gloin laughed, patted his ample belly until his gray beard shook. "I'm old now," he sighed, "but you two hardly seem to have aged. It's remarkable." He turned and pulled forward a broad axe-wielding dwarf. "This is my son, Gimli, one of the finest of the younger generation." He slapped the dwarf on the back of the head. "Come on, Gimli, meet Bilbo and Dewey, old friends from the expedition." Both Dewey and Bilbo winced at the hard hand. Gimli's face was mostly lost beneath a reddish-brown beard. A helmed head left only darting eyes and a reserved, earnest expression. "Hello," he said simply. "I am Gimli, son of Gloin. A pleasure." Dewey regarded him with interest. This was the Gimli who, in the original tale, would prove himself a brave fighter, withstand great trials at Pelennor and elsewhere, break his people's distrust of elves, and become close friends with Legolas. He would one day found a realm in the Glittering Caves and, in an unusual fate for a dwarf, sail west to Valinor with his elven friend. "Hello, Gimli. Pleasure to meet you," Dewey said, taking on the kindly air of an elder. He flicked his wrist and produced a brooch. "Since this is our first meeting, take this. It's a small enchantment, a brooch that can save you from 3 fatal blows. I hope it serves you well." Gimli's eyes lit up. He made no ceremony. He seized the brooch, pinned it to his chest, and patted it with a delighted chuckle. "Ha! Thank you, Lord Dewey." Gloin clapped his son on the head with a grin. "Lucky fool. Thank you, Dewey." As an old comrade of Dewey's, Gloin knew the worth of such a gift. He could not refuse it, but he noted the favor with visible gratitude. One by one, others stepped forward. Boromir of Gondor, Theodred of Rohan, Bane of Dale, and Grimbeorn each came to greet Dewey. Their fathers or grandfathers had known him. These were the younger generation who had grown up with the tales. Boromir and Grimbeorn used affectionate titles, Professor Dewey, Principal Dewey, because both men, a Dunedain and a skins changer respectively, had magical talent. They had received Owlpost and trained at Hogwarts for 7 years, and carried wands in addition to their weapons. Dewey was generous with protective trinkets for the descendants of his old friends. Small charms that could withstand ordinary spells 3 times and might mean the difference between life and death against blades and common attacks. After greetings and pleasantries, everyone took their seats around the round table and the council began. Elrond, as host, would normally open and speak of the ring, but a Fidelius charm had been used, and only the secret keeper could speak of certain matters. Elrond had invited everyone without revealing details, only that the business was grave and concerned the fate of Middle-earth, so some present did not know the true subject. Under puzzled looks from the assembly, Elrond deferred to Dewey, who had been entrusted as secret keeper. Dewey rose without protest. "Before you arrived," he said, "some of you were unaware of the purpose of this council. The secrecy magic in place prevents Lord Elrond and others from speaking freely, so I must explain the situation. You have all heard the rumors of the One Ring. In the War of the Last Alliance long ago, Isildur cut the ring from the Dark Lord Sauron's hand, and the ring was taken as spoils. Isildur was later slain in an orc ambush, and the ring disappeared. Now it has reappeared. Decades ago, it was taken by Bilbo Baggins. For a time, we entrusted it to the oldest, Tom Bombadil, for safekeeping. But recently, the ring's power has been growing more active." Dewey spoke slowly and carefully, laying out the history and the present danger for everyone gathered, explaining the ring's return and why this council had been called. The news of the One Ring stunned everyone present. Voices rose in shocked murmurs until Bane, the Lord of Dale, spoke aloud. "So, Lord Dewey, do you mean that if this One Ring is destroyed, the Dark Lord will be finished for good?" Dewey nodded. When the One Ring was forged, Sauron poured the greater part of his will and power into it. They are bound together. If the ring leaves its master, Sauron loses shape and much of his strength. If the ring returns to him, he will regain his might, renew his wars, and seek dominion over all the lands. Only by utterly destroying the ring will Sauron truly perish and never return. Then his shadowed hosts will no longer threaten Middle-earth. All eyes turned to Frodo. At Dewey's signal, Frodo crossed to the stone table in the center of the hall and took from his pouch the small silver box that contained the ring. Inside there remained only a shallow film of basilisk venom, just enough to keep the ring submerged. Frodo lifted the ring free with a dagger and set it on the tabletop. The moment the ring lay exposed, those present felt it. The elves in the hall, sensitive to such things, recoiled as though from some living peril, like snakes or scorpions. Only Elrond and Galadriel did not step back. They watched the ring with grave faces. Galadriel murmured, "Its power has grown even stronger." Her tone carried a double weight that only Elrond, Gandalf, and Dewey fully understood. Not only had the ring's lure increased, but its master, Sauron, had become more dangerous. The ring began, almost at once, to reach into minds and will. Men first showed the strain. Prince Theodred of Rohan and of Dale looked troubled, torn by the sudden covetousness. Boromir, Gondor's regent, and grim Beorn of the Anduin Valley were next. Their gazes darkened with longing. Aragorn and Legolas felt the pull, but held firm by sheer force of will. For Gimli, son of Gloin, the ring's voice was different, more like insistent buzzing than sweet temptation, and it irritated him. Annoyed, Gimli seized his broad axe and charged. He roared, swung with all his strength, and struck the table. The blow had such recoil that he was thrown backward. The axe, though edged with mithril, was split and flung apart, leaving only the haft in his hand. The stone table cracked and teetered. The ring remained unscathed, not a nick upon its gold. Gimli's outburst broke the spell on those whose resolve had wavered. Shocked by the ring's indestructibility, they stepped back, fearful of another touch. "All right, Frodo, put the ring away," Dewey commanded. Frodo hurried to the broken table, took the ring with his bare hand, and set it back into the silver box. Seeing the venom nearly gone, he took from his pouch the bottle Dewey had given him and poured the rest into the box until the ring lay completely beneath the dark liquid. The moment the ring was submerged, its call was cut off. Its power went silent. Frodo closed the box and returned it to his pouch beside the light of Arendil. Everyone watched him take the ring in his hand. No one else had dared to touch it, and their astonishment deepened. They had felt its influence from a distance. Yet this small, plain hobbit had handled it and appeared unharmed. Their disbelief and wonder spread through the hall. Dewey and Gandalf exchanged a look, then Dewey raised his voice to address them all. "Now you have seen the ring," he said. "Its temptation is vast. Even the strongest may fall and become its puppet. But the race of hobbits shows a resistance far beyond that of other peoples. For this reason we chose Frodo Baggins to bear it. But as time passes, the ring will only grow in strength. Those who dwell near it may be beguiled. The bond between it and Sauron will deepen, and soon he will be able to sense it. When that day comes, Sauron will stop at nothing to reclaim it. That is the purpose of this council," Dewey continued. "We must decide what to do with the ring. Speak now." A hush fell, then a murmur of conversation. Boromir rose. "Lord Dewey, since the ring's destruction would end the Dark Lord, is there a way to break it once and for all?" Gandalf answered. "The ring was forged in the fires of Mount Doom. It is not something any blade or flame of Middle-earth can unmake. Not even dragonfire will destroy it. Only in the fire of its making, Mount Doom, can it be unmade." At that word, a surge of hope swept the human realms in the hall. Gondor and Rohan had suffered Mordor's shadow for generations. To end Sauron would lift a vast burden. Boromir and Theodred could not contain themselves. Both sprang to their feet as if by one impulse. "Then we should march to Mordor," Boromir declared. "Raise a host, strike Barad-dûr, and send a small company with the ring to Mount Doom to cast it in the fire." Theodred echoed him. "Rohan will support it with all our strength." Bane of Dale and grim Beorn spoke the same. Gimli stamped his foot, voice raw with zeal. "Dwarves will charge through Mordor, too. I'll throw that coward out of Barad-dûr myself and let him know the taste of axe." Gloin scolded his son, rapping the back of his head. Fool, your axe is broken. How do you mean to wield it now? The excitement was infectious, but Gandalf's grave voice checked them. Mordor is Sauron's powerhouse. The land itself is shrouded in dark strength. Within it, his power is at full. If we march there, our vigor will be sapped and our armies will weaken. Even if we brought a great host, the losses would be terrible. Worse, the moment the ring crosses into Mordor, Sauron would perceive it. We would be carrying the very thing he seeks into his hands. If he reclaims the ring, there would be no stopping him. A pall fell across the hall. Boromir's shoulders slumped. Then is there no way? He asked. Glorfindel rose, calm and luminous. Perhaps we need not go the direct path to Mount Doom, he offered. There are powers in the west, Valar, whose strength far surpasses Sauron's. Could the ring not be taken to the Blessed Realm and unmade there by powers greater than he? The idea rippled through the council like a fresh wind, and all eyes turned toward the Eldar who had spoken. At Glorfindel's words, a light of hope spread through the assembly. If the ring could be sent west to Valinor and placed in the hands of the Valar, Sauron might be ended without open war and at the least possible cost. Every eye turned to Galdor, secretary to the shipwright Círdan. Secretary Galdor, when will Lord Círdan return to the Grey Havens? Someone asked. Círdan had not attended the council. He had put to sea again, ferrying another company of elves westward, and had sent his secretary in his stead. Galdor met their hopeful looks. By past reckoning, Círdan will be back at the Grey Havens with the spring rains on the western winds. The news lifted their spirits. Prince Theodred of Rohan spoke with cheerful confidence. There is ample time. We need only wait half a year. Once Círdan's ships are in port, we can sail the ring to the Blessed Realm. Then the Dark Lord will never touch it again, another cried. If the Valar destroy the ring, Sauron himself will vanish and Middle-earth will know long peace. Most shared that hope. If Sauron could be beaten so cheaply, why not seize it? But Elrond's face was clouded. The plan has one great flaw, he said. How do we carry the ring safely to Valinor? Remember the ring's peril, he warned. It tempts every heart. The voyage west takes many months. Months aboard one ship with the ring. Who can swear the crew will not succumb? The very journey may fail. His words cooled them. Brows knitted around the circle. They had felt the ring's lure only moments ago. In minutes, they had nearly fallen. To sail beside it for months seemed impossible. Then is our only road still the fires of Mount Doom? Someone sighed. That path felt harder still. One misstep could lay the ring straight into Sauron's hands. Shipping it west sounded safer, if only they could keep the crew from falling under its sway. Gandalf exchanged a look with Duir. Duir gave a small nod and rose. My lords, he said, all heads turned. Delivering the ring safely to Valinor is not impossible, Duir went on. You have seen how its power can be weakened, how certain substances dull it, and a casket or warding will further blunt its peril. I can teach a clumency, he added. When Círdan returns, we can choose steadfast elven mariners and train them. Kept from direct contact, they can endure the ring's lure and complete the voyage. As bearer, I still name Frodo Baggins, Duir concluded. Let him sail west with the ring and place it in Valoran hands. A murmur ran through the council. But only elves may set foot in Valinor, someone objected. Can a halfling endure the journey? Duir looked to Gandalf. Gandalf stood and answered for him. No matter. Frodo goes only to deliver the ring and will return home when the deed is done. Gandalf's word carried weight. No one pressed the matter further. Instead, the hall buzzed with plans. Escorts, timetables, defenses. All agreed Sauron would strike the moment he guessed their intent. The half-year before Círdan's return would be perilous. Sauron might assail the west, by land and sea, or come himself to reclaim the ring. Even after the ships sailed, the sea road would be dangerous. Corsairs watched every shore and strait, and a so-called safe passage could turn into a gauntlet. While the council debated, Gandalf, supported by Duir, Elrond, Galadriel, and others, proposed forming a company, a fellowship whose outward task would be to guard the ring and escort it aboard ship for Valinor. Yet this was not the whole truth. The Sail West plan had been put forward as a feint. Glorfindel had raised it first, and the others had joined in as rehearsed. In truth, none of them truly meant to send the ring to Valinor. Gandalf reminded them that the Valar would not govern Middle-earth directly. Even the mightier Maiar, if they came, would be cloaked in forms not to exercise their full power. The ring was an evil made in Middle-earth. Its fate should be decided by those who would inherit its peace. Had they even asked, the Valar might have refused the ring. Still, the prospect of sailing to the Blessed Realm drew many, and the tale of a voyage west served a purpose. It would bind disparate peoples together and mask their true intent. In the end, 9 companions were chosen to bind all races and to make a case to Sauron that would draw his eye and divert his hand. For Rivendell in the line of kings, Aragorn; for Gondor, Boromir; for the Elves, Legolas; for the dwarves, Gimli; at their heart the ring-bearer, Frodo. Sam, Merry, and Pippin begged to go. At Frodo's plea, they were admitted. Last came Gandalf himself, leader of the Fellowship, to guide their road. Gandalf had wished Duir to walk with them, but Duir declined. He must remain at Hogwarts, organizing strength to aid Rivendell, Lothlorien, Gondor, Rohan, and the Grey Havens against Mordor. Once the Sail West story spread, the Havens would become a target. Mordor would strike by land and sea to stop any voyage of the ring. Any overland assault on the westernmost coasts would cross Duir's lands. War was certain. Sauron himself might take the field. Empowered by the shadow of Morgoth, the Dark Lord's strength had soared. Perhaps he had regained bodily form. When battle came, it would be grim, and all Middle-earth might feel its tremors. After the meeting ended, the representatives returned to their homes by way of the fireplaces. The newly formed Fellowship of the Ring remained in Rivendell for the time being, where Gandalf repeated the true plan. "So we are not escorting the ring to the west, but secretly going east, into Mordor?" Boromir asked. The rest of the Fellowship stared, surprised to hear the real intent. Gandalf nodded. "We have cast a fog to blind Sauron's sight. The fewer who know the truth, the better. Besides, the ring's link to Sauron strengthens the closer it is to him. If it approaches Mordor, he will be more likely to sense it. Only by drawing Sauron's attention away from Mordor, by luring him out as far as possible, can we seize the chance to slip into his realm and cast the ring into Mount Doom." Duir added, "When the time comes, I will make a portkey to carry you to the pass of Cirith Ungol, the entrance nearest Mordor. From there, you can make your way into the lands of Mordor. As for going any farther by such means, it is impossible. The very heart of Mordor is suffused with Sauron's power. If you are careless, he will detect you, and once his vigilance is aroused, all will be lost." Frodo and the others felt relief. With Duir's aid, they would save most of the long journey. The distance from Rivendell to Mordor on foot would be immense, full of exhausting travel and countless dangers. Meanwhile, in the White Tower of Minas Tirith, the steward Denethor II sat on his black seat and read a letter sent by his eldest son, Boromir, from Rivendell. The letter had been written immediately after the council and prudently omitted the true plan. It spoke only of the ring's appearance and the council's decision to send it to the Blessed Realm in the west. The news startled Denethor, but it also kindled a dangerous hope. Gondor's power had waned, territories were lost, Mordor brooded to the east, and the Haradrim and Corsairs harried the south. Denethor had long been consumed with the desire to restore Gondor's strength. If he could possess the One Ring, perhaps he could stand against Sauron. Since becoming steward, the once vigorous, ambitious Denethor had watched his nation's decline with a growing gloom that deepened the ruts in his brow. Those lines eased only slightly when he was with his beloved wife and his eldest son. But his wife's health had failed after the birth of their second son, Faramir, and when she succumbed to a long illness, Denethor shut himself away and turned his anger on Faramir. He had grown ever sterner and more remote, a solitary, hardening ruler. That Boromir had joined the Fellowship and proposed sending the ring to Valinor tightened his frown. Valinor, the legendary Blessed Realm, was too remote and too removed from the needs of Gondor to be of any help. Denethor distrusted the Valar and the old tales. He had prayed in his grief and in the nation's decline and had received no miracle. He trusted no outsiders, he trusted only himself. If anything were to happen to Boromir at sea, he could not accept it. Worse, the letter mentioned the appearance of a descendant of the old kings at the council. Denethor's face went utterly dark. The name in his mind scorched him, Thoron Tsel. He remembered the man who had come from the north in his father Ecthelion's time, who had joined Gondor's navy, led a daring assault on the corsairs of Umbar, burned their ships, slain the port admiral, and removed a great southern threat. Thoron Sel had gained enormous prestige and the trust of Ecthelion Sick, becoming a close counselor who steered Gondor clear of many dangers. Denethor took note. Thoron Sel's look and bearing recalled the ancient kings of Gondor, and that stirred Denethor's vigilance. Secret inquiries convinced Denethor that Thoron Sel was indeed of the royal line. Finding that Thoron was on good terms with Gandalf, Denethor suspected a collusion to supplant the stewards. Perhaps Thoron felt the suspicion and left Gondor before Denethor inherited the stewardship. That did nothing to ease Denethor's distrust. If anything, it deepened it. In his view, the line of stewards had borne the kingdom's burdens for generations and would not willingly yield their charge to a foreign claimant. He would sooner see Gondor undone than bow and swear fealty to another. So, angry and alarmed, Denethor crushed the letter in his fist. He rose and strode alone to the White Tower, drew back the black cloth, and set his hands upon the palantir. He fixed his gaze into its glass to watch his realm, to see that all remained under his control. He used it often to direct troops and to learn of dangers. Gandalf had warned him to use the stone carefully. Sauron, too, had a palantir, and might corrupt the mind of any who looked. But Denethor no longer trusted Gandalf. Even if he did, he felt he had no choice. He must see for himself. He did not know that each time he peered into the stone, an unseen will within it reached out and worked upon his mind. That influence made Denethor more unbending. A flicker of madness glimmered behind his eyes. He grew into the image of a lonely king defending his power, suspicious and watchful of all outsiders. Far to the east, in Barad-dûr, Sauron looked through a palantir as vast as a millstone. In the crystal, Denethor's likeness appeared, and the Dark Lord read the steward's memories as clearly as if they were his own. The One Ring, Sauron breathed, his voice like shadow. At last I have found it. Send it to Valinor? Ha! Dream on. This time the forces of darkness shall triumph. At Sauron's command, the southern port of Umbar put to sea. 100 great warships, with countless smaller craft, sailed north in proud array. The pirate fleet based at Umbar, Haradrim and black Númenóreans in league with Mordor, had long roamed unchecked across the Bay of Belfalis. For years they had dominated Gondor's ships, driving the Gondor fleet to concentrate at Pelargir. Only 10 years ago, when Aragorn, under the name Thoron Sel, led a surprise strike on Umbar, killing the port-marshal and burning many vessels, were the corsairs finally broken, and their threat to the southern coasts blunted. Now, more than a decade later, Umbar had a new marshal, and many lost ships had been recovered. As the pirate fleet cleared the bay, a Gondorian patrol sighted them. The navy at once grew tense, fearing an attack on Gondor, and readied for a desperate fight, only to see the corsairs ignore the patrol and keep north. The commander at Pelargir, puzzled but relieved, sent word to Minas Tirith by express courier. Regent Denethor II showed little outward emotion when the news reached him. After a quick glance at the map, he told his secretary calmly, "Send word of the corsairs heading north to Rivendell. Order the first captain of the East and the Southern Fleet to prepare to defend against an assault from Mordor." The letter reached Elrond in Rivendell that same day. He looked grave as he read it. Dewey happened to be nearby, and seeing the change in Elrond's face, asked, "Is something wrong, Lord Elrond?" Elrond handed the parchment over. Denethor reports the corsairs of Umbar crossing the Bay of Belfalis and sailing north, at least 100 great ships and countless smaller craft. Dewey read it closely, then frowned. The corsairs are Mordor's instruments. Their movement north must be at Sauron's bidding. Of the northern ports, Lund-Dare has long been abandoned. The only likely objective is the Grey Havens. He met Elrond's eyes. "Sauron already knows our plan." Elrond nodded. "He intends to strike the Grey Havens and blockade the sea to prevent our sending the ring to the west." They had expected Sauron might learn of their design. Indeed, in part they had hoped to distract him, but the speed with which he had acted took them unawares. "We must warn the Grey Havens at once," Dewey said. "They must be ready. Lord Círdan has not returned from the sea. The Havens lack a leader of his stature. It must not fall." Elrond's concern deepened. With Círdan absent, the only person to carry authority was Galdor, and the Corsairs' approach made a major battle all but inevitable. Elrond wished to go himself, but Rivendell could not be left unattended. Dewey saw his distress and offered, "I will send 100 elite aurors to reinforce the Grey Havens. Their aid should suffice against those pirates." Elrond's tension eased at that. He trusted Dewey's auror wizards. 100 of them were worth far more than many thousands of ordinary troops. The bond between Elrond and Dewey, father-in-law and son-in-law, had also brought Rivendell and Hogwarts close. Many elves in Rivendell now bore wands and had learned spells that made them stronger than their kin elsewhere. Aurors were trained in nearly every potent form of magic. Only the 3 unforgivable curses were withheld, except in the rarest cases. Those who passed Dewey's strict tests and proved utterly trustworthy might be shown even such dark arts. Otherwise, the more profound and dangerous lore was reserved for aurors, professors, and the like. Hogwarts opened its gates to all who showed magical talent, teaching common and useful magics, but not the deepest and most perilous secrets. Once the matter of the Grey Havens was settled, conversation turned inexorably to the Fellowship. They had resolved to deceive Sauron, to make the eye believe the ring-bearer sought the sea, so the true attempt to reach Mount Doom might go unnoticed. The Fellowship must therefore split and present 2 stories. Frodo, Sam, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli formed the covert party and would be moved in secret to Lothlorien through the use of the Vanishing Cabinet. The visible party would travel west. Bilbo, Merry, Pippin, Boromir, and Gandalf would make a public journey toward the Grey Havens to draw Sauron's attention. Bilbo volunteered to pose as his nephew Frodo. Merry and Pippin had been considered for the task, but their lively, unmistakable manner made them poor imitators. Bilbo, who knew Frodo well, could deceive at a glance. Dewey had prepared a polyjuice potion made with a lock of Frodo's hair. Bilbo drank and took on Frodo's appearance. Standing beside the true Frodo, Bilbo's likeness was perfect. Only his more mature bearing betrayed him to anyone looking closely. To complete the ruse, Dewey provided Bilbo with a golden ring, crafted to appear exactly like the One Ring and steeped in enchantment, a confundus charm, and a dark aura, so convincing that no one but those most familiar with the real ring could tell the difference. Thus Bilbo, disguised as Frodo, set off westward with Merry, Pippin, Boromir, and Gandalf. Gandalf's presence lent the episode additional verisimilitude. It was precisely the sort of movement Sauron would expect. Following Gandalf's counsel, they abandoned any plan to use the fireplaces for direct transport, claiming the ring made flue travel unstable, and instead took to the air on the Pegasi Elrond lent them. The visible party would head openly for the Grey Havens, while the true ring-bearer and his small guardians slipped away on the hidden road to destruction. Gandalf rode a great white Pegasus with Frodo and Bilbo. Boromir shared another with Merry and Pippin. The beasts were large enough to carry 2 or 3 adults without crowding, so even with Boromir and the 2 hobbits, the saddles felt roomy. Under the cheers of everyone in Rivendell, the 5 set off on their Pegasi. Except for a few, Elrond, Dewey, and Glorfindel among them, most believed that Frodo was the real ring-bearer, and that they were carrying the One Ring to the Grey Havens to sail into the west. As the Pegasi rose from the valley and swept into the sky, a red-eyed crow watching from the woods took note of them. It sprang into the air with a harsh caw and flew off toward the misty mountains. The riders, however, were unaware of the bird's flight. Merry and Pippin bounced on the Pegasus's back, peering at the land far below and shouting with delight. Even Boromir, who had studied at Hogwarts and ridden in Pegasus-drawn carriages to the castle each year, felt his heart lift. He had never before felt the rush of flying a Pegasus through the air. Caught up in the hobbits' excitement, he joined their cheering. He also knew the danger of their mission. This public company was meant to draw the enemy's attention and buy time for the smaller, secret band. As heir to the region of Gondor, Boromir wanted Sauron destroyed so that Gondor might no longer tremble before Mordor. That conviction steadied his courage. They were still high and light-hearted when Gandalf's smile fell away. He turned a sharp look toward the ridge behind them and shouted, "Be on your guard!" Boromir and the hobbits turned and sucked in breath. A black blotch filled the far sky. tens of thousands of blood-sucking bats streaming toward them. "Get down! We have no advantage in the air," Gandalf cried. He drove his Pegasus down in a steep dive. Boromir gripped his mount, told Merry and Pippin to hold fast, and plunged toward the ground almost vertically. The bats were swift. They caught up in a frantic, choking swarm and struck from every side. Within moments, Boromir, Merry, and Pippin were cut and scraped as the animals peppered them. Boromir tried to strike back, but his Pegasus had panicked. Wounded wings beat wildly, and the beast bucked as it tried to escape. The violent thrashing forced the riders to cling on or be thrown thousands of feet and dashed to death. Gandalf's mount was likewise attacked. The wizard raised his staff and flung up a ring of holy light that kept the worst of the swarm off him and those beside him. Seeing Boromir's plight, he poured more power into the spell. The barrier swelled into a wave of light that blasted a path through the bats. "Land, now," he ordered. Boromir wrested control of his Pegasus and took the brief opening to touch down. They hit the ground before the bats could renew their assault. Boromir leapt off first, hauling Merry and Pippin behind him, sword in one hand and wand in the other. 7 years at Hogwarts had not made his magic brilliant, but he knew the useful spells: a flick to summon Protego for defense, and a swing of his longsword to rip any bat that came too close. Merry and Pippin, still trembling, drew the small knives Duir had given them and huddled behind the shield. Gandalf, his spellwork shifting, kept Bilbo close and set Glamdring flashing through the air. Each swing threw up an invisible net of blades that sheared bats apart. Foul, scented blood spattered his gray robe and the ground beneath him. He fought to protect Bilbo and to link up with Boromir. For a time, the earth was piled with carcasses and the smell of rancid blood. The slaughter only seemed to fuel the swarm's frenzy. However, tens of thousands remained, and after a long, bloody fight, the party had felled but a small number. Then the bats did something more terrible. They halted in a tight, impenetrable ring around the party and, together, emitted a silent, pressure-made wave. One bat's noise would have been negligible. The compounded sound from so many was not. Boromir and the hobbits could not hear it, but they felt its effect. A crushing tightness in the chest, breath stolen as if by hands, a sudden hammering pain behind the eyes that threatened to split skull and organs alike. Boromir went to his knees and leaned on his sword, gasping. His Protego went slack and vanished. Bilbo, Merry, and Pippin folded over, moaning. Gandalf's cheeks flushed red. He planted his staff hard into the ground and thundered in a voice that rolled like a blow of lightning, "Evil, begone!" The roar punched back the sonic assault, and the holy light he loosed in waves drove the nearest bats away. "Go! We cannot stay here!" Gandalf barked. He set Bilbo on the Pegasus' back, vaulted up himself, and urged the beast westward along the ground. Boromir did not hesitate. He loaded Merry and Pippin onto his Pegasus, one hobbit to each side, then bounded up and chased after Gandalf. The wings of both Pegasi dripped blood. Their ability to fly was badly diminished, but as descendants of the great eagles and of noble divine steeds, they ran with astonishing speed on the earth. The two beasts became streaks of white across the plain, throwing dust as they raced. The bats, only momentarily beaten back, surged after them, intent on draining them clean. Hours passed in a desperate, exhausting pursuit. When the bats drew close again and the rider's strength began to fail, Gandalf's face brightened with sudden hope. "Faster," he urged. "We're about to cross the last bridge. That is Hogwarts territory. We'll be safe once we get over." Everyone looked up, spirits lifting at the sight of an ancient span crossing a deep river valley ahead. The last bridge west of Trollshaw Forest stood like a promise. The Pegasi seemed to sense it too, and burst forward. They crossed the bridge with only seconds to spare, the bats romping over the span behind them. The beasts did not slow. They thundered on along the Great East Road. Just as the bats closed in again and the company braced for another pitched fight, faint cracking noises split the air. Wizards in Auror uniforms began to appear across the waste, apparition after apparition. They formed a tight semicircle around the fleeing group, wands raised to the sky, and stood like a wall between the tired travelers and the ravenous swarm.